Hello everyone, this is Melissa and welcome to the OpenSolar Podcast, where we cover the inevitable shift into a world powered by sunshine.
That's right, Melissa. Hey everybody, I'm Sophie and we're going to cover the people, the technologies, the policy, everything that's contributing to the acceleration of solar adoption.
We call it the S-curve. Hi, I'm Birchy and we're delighted to have you along for the ride, so let's get into it.
Birchy, you're used to being in the hot seat, but today the tables have turned. Birchy is actually the CEO of OpenSolar, a leader in the solar industry, a dad, a passionate advocate for renewable energy, and a surfer. He's someone who doesn't just talk the talk, and he walks the walk. So welcome to the podcast, Birchy. How are you today?
I'm good. It's nerve-wracking to be on the other side, so be nice to me.
No, of course. I'm always nice to you. So, I thought today we could start the podcast a little bit different, and I've got a bit of an icebreaker for you. So, if you had a solar-powered superpower, what would it be?
A solar-powered superpower. Well, I guess the thing that I'm most fascinated about is in physics is time. So I guess I would have a solar-powered time-traveling machine. And the way I see the future, I get really excited about imagining a world where you're going through a city and it's just these beautiful silent electric cars with no pollution coming out the back. And we're living in a world where we've largely solved climate change, where everyone has access to energy. So in that kind of 2040s, 2050 timeframe, I think that's where the S-curve is taking us with solar. So I would have a time traveling machine and I would get rid of the next 20 years of having to work on all these challenges and just get straight to a world powered by sunshine.
Oh, that sounds really, really cool. And I hope that today we can actually uncover what it really means to have an electrified life. I'd love to find out more about how your family has played a part as well, and how I can take a step to have a more solar powered future, because it's something that's really new for me, you know. Could you tell me more about how OpenSolar came to be?
Yeah, so I got into solar 25 years ago, so I've been doing this a long time. And I worked with a guy called Adam at the prior company, and we did a lot of work for 10 years, mostly in the US, but also in Europe and Australia, on how we could use software to make it easier for customers to go solar, to understand what the technology does and how it can help you. And at the time, you would ring up a contractor and he or she would drive a truck out to your home and they would climb on your roof, and about 2 weeks later you got a piece of paper with a bunch of mumbo jumbo about what these technologies did. And what the first company Adam and I did took to market was the ability to put your address into a website, and immediately, like the next day, you got a full vision of your home that was electrified with solar power, and you got different system sizes. It's all super simple and easy. So we've been doing software for a long time, and OpenSolar was the natural extension of that, to make that software available to everyone all over the world. That's kind of our goal.
Oh, I really like that. And what would you say an electrified life actually means to you? Because to you and I, that term makes sense, but I feel that a lot of people won't know what an electrified life actually means.
Yeah, so it's really simple. It's all your machines and equipment, everything runs on electricity. And that electricity is powered by sunshine. So today, most people still around the world are burning gas or wood or oil to heat their homes. They're burning petrol or gasoline to power their cars. And generally, it's a fossil fuel powered existence that gives you all this energy that makes the lifestyle that many of us enjoy today. And the electrified life is a much more clean, empowered, self-powered life where you have your own solar system, you have an EV that you charge directly from the sun for free, that gives you amazing fast cars and transportation and cool, quiet, powerful, fast journey. And your heating comes from electricity also powered from the sun. So the whole thing is solar powered, and it just kind of feels good and you're more engaged with it.
Yeah, I kind of like that, because when you talk about it's like solar power, I also think a lot about the future, because essentially it's obviously a clean energy source. And I guess that would be important to you as a father as well, thinking about the future of the world. And I wonder, how did your family adapt to your kind of electrified lifestyle?
Yeah, well, first I think we've obviously we've I've been into the environment my whole life, and I think we've raised the three gorgeous little girls we have, although they're not very little anymore. My wife and I have always educated them on the environment and biodiversity loss and climate change issues. Just this morning at the breakfast table, I read the news story that I got out of bed and read, which is that we've got the highest CO2 levels in 800,000 years. And we've got real threat to humanity and biodiversity just from the planet warming. And so they're very aware of it. And so, we've had an electric car for over 10 years. When the kids were super tiny and we lived in California, we had a little Fiat E500, and they used to all put their heads out the sunroof as we went around, accelerate down the street towards our house in California. So we've sort of tried to make it fun. But they know that there's a solar system on the barn behind the house that gives us our electricity. We've enjoyed EV travels for many years, and they're really into being part of the solution, I think.
Oh, but I like that. But I want to learn more about your house because I've heard a lot of rumors about your house and how it's basically the most solidified house in the whole of Devon. And how many like electrified appliances would you say that you have? What are they?
So everything is electric, the lawnmower, the toothbrush, the razor,
Yeah.
the lights, we have a beautiful range cooker with, induction top, electric heating and to cook with. We have a heat pump, which is a ground source heat pump in our case, because we live in a very rural area. And that basically is taking electric energy from the solar system and from the grid, and it's turning, 1 unit of energy into 4 units of heat. So it's incredibly efficient. Heat pumps are incredibly efficient ways to heat your home.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of misinformation on that. So we live in, check this out, it's a 600-year-old farmhouse. Like it's properly, you can see some of the beams behind me there. It's properly
Wow.
old. Yeah, like pirates used to live here. If you go online, there's this funny story about how it used to be a pirate who lived here many years ago, which we love. We love
That's
that
so
random
cool.
fact.
That is really random.
Yeah, but the point is, from an energy perspective, it's like, single glazed windows, old stone, big, high spaces and hard to heat. So my theory is if we can successfully save money on our energy cost with a heat pump, a solar system and an EV with a little bit of insulation on the roof, then, any modern home or newer, better, more efficient home can do it much more easily than we have. And we love it.
No, absolutely. It's really interesting that you say that, but a lot of people they want to get, solar powered appliances, but they believe that it's too expensive or really hard to do. And I think that does hold a lot of people back. I know that for myself, that kind of always held me back, even though I'm a homeowner. I'm like, gosh, how much would it cost for me to really, get an EV, get solar panels on my house, So even though it's something that I consciously want to do in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a common challenge that we have in converting our world to solar electrification, because people rightfully don't have all the information and there is an upfront cost. So one of the big differences between the current situation where you might pay a monthly bill for your gas and your electricity is with a solar system, you're basically talking about owning an asset that has 25 years of energy that's going to deliver that energy pretty much for free for 25 years. So you're effectively buying 25 years of energy up front,
Yeah.
which is quite different. So in many ways, it's nice because once you've bought it, you've got this lovely free energy. But how do you afford that upfront cost? And so there's a couple of things I'd say. That firstly, at OpenSolar, we have partners coming online more and more that offer financial solutions. So you can choose to pay monthly for that energy, which is really
Okay.
cool. Another thing, what I did when I moved back to the UK, when we moved into this house, we put it on our mortgage. So we were lucky enough to have a mortgage, and we just
Oh,
simply
wow.
we added the system to the price of the house. We borrowed that money, we pay it back over 20 years, and, it's low cost capital. And the money we spend on energy here compared to what we used to have to spend with oil and gas and petrol for the car. Fully electrified life now has reduced our cost by well over half over a
Wow.
20-year period, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. What would you say is the biggest myth about solar power?
That it just doesn't work or it's too expensive are the things that, like it won't give me all the energy I need, and EVs will make my life worse, not better, and heat pumps can't heat my home. They're the kind of talk track. So just to take those one by one, you can put as much solar as you can on your roof. That's going to be the lowest cost energy you can possibly get in the UK, in Europe, in the US, Australia, Africa, Asia, everywhere. So it's the lowest cost energy. So get as much as you can on the roof, and the rest you can get from the grid with a green electricity supplier from some combination of solar and wind from your utility. So that gives you kind of all the electricity you need. And then if you get a heat pump, that's going to save you money over the life of the heat pump versus heating your home with burning gas or oil or something else.
I drove my first EV car a few weeks ago, and I was just so surprised to see how fast it is. That thing
Yes.
was fast. Is it horsepower? It was just like, "Phew," like my car
Yeah.
could just never compete with that. So it's also interesting. Okay, so it feels like a big change, but it's a better change in a way.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to just education, is it? And realizing, okay, what happens to your life if you get an EV car, and your car will be most likely be faster.
Yeah. Faster, cooler, better. Like I honestly think we'll look back 10 years from now and go, imagine this world we used to live in where there was like fumes coming out the back of the car that were literally killing people. Like 7 million people a year die from those fumes, according to the World Health Organization. So we'd look back and say, like, how stupid and old fashioned were these cars that burn stuff, had like thousands of moving parts in them, just super complicated vehicles. And now we have, a lot of digital enhancements around these beautiful electric cars, nothing coming out the back. They're faster, cleaner, better, cheaper. I mean, it's just like, it makes so much sense.
So, but you haven't always been in solar energy, clean energy, am I right? I'd love to learn more about your journey and your transition into clean energy all the way 25 years ago. I'd love to learn more about how you got into clean energy yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so 25 years ago and before that, as a kid, I used to get called all sorts of names, but one of them was Captain Planet. And so I've always been into the environment. Um, I didn't have a cloak or anything or any solar superpowers, but I always cared about the environment. And I tried to do my first kind of role job was in banking, but trying to do socially responsible investment and redirect capital to things that were good for the planet. And in that, I met a solar company that showed me this chart of costs falling in solar really rapidly. And so the assumption at the time was that solar was always going to be the most expensive technology. But this chart showed the trend. And I just got so excited about what that trend could do. And as a kind of physics geek, I always had in my head that, like, how can it be more expensive to have a manufactured, beautiful kind of iPad-like glass module directly converting energy right where you need it? How could that be more expensive than building machines to dig fossil fuels out of the ground, to transport those fossil fuels all the way around the world, to burn them in power plants that lose 60% of the energy, to put them into a grid that loses another 10%, and then into a light bulb that loses another 90%? Like, there must be solar and efficient use must be lower cost and more efficient ultimately. So that was just a hunch. And so I quit my job, sold everything I owned, gave a bunch of clothes to charity, packed my one bag and moved to Australia to do a postgraduate in photovoltaics. And I did that and did my thesis in the economics of solar. I joined BP Solar to learn about the industry and did a lot of the early policy work in Australia. That
Wait,
got that.
wait, I must stop you there. So you
Yeah.
joined BP Solar. That's really, really interesting. Can you tell me more about that? And how do you feel about them reversing their decision to actually support the energy transition into solar energy and clean energy?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So 25 years ago, there were two main solar manufacturers, and they were both the oil companies, Shell and BP. They had solar divisions. So my theory at the time was they're massive companies and they were making a lot of noise about shifting to alternative energy. So I joined them to basically help them spend that money to convert to become low carbon companies. And that I thought would be a smart thing, and learn about the business. And there were great people who worked there who now work all across the solar industry 25 years on. So yeah, I did that spell at BP. And as you say, it's super interesting. They've tried in fits and starts to do a little bit of alternative energy and renewables, but ultimately they still spend 96% of their capital investment in fossil fuels. So there was a lot of greenwashing there. And finally, as you saw a few weeks ago, the new CEO at BP has said, we give up. We have nothing to do with renewables. We're an oil company. So at least they came clean in the end, right?
Yeah.
Took a bit
Oh
of time.
goodness, that is really interesting, and I guess so that's where where it began, where then your old company and Open Solar then became an idea. That's really interesting. So thank you. If someone's listening and they want to make that transition themselves, what is a small step that they can take?
So I think there's a number of different ways you can get into this amazing kind of evolution. It's going to be the biggest industrial shift and societal shift, I think, over the next 10 years as solar grows from just 5% of supply to 50 over the next 10 years. How you can participate in that, a number of different ways. As a homeowner, you can go to opensolar.com. You can now, get a quote from your local contractor and see what solar can do for you, which is a really easy, free thing that you can find out about. And you can ultimately choose to get a solar system. There's three things you need in your home, really, to make it all come together. A solar system, ideally with a battery, a heat pump, and an EV. If you do those three things, and by the way, if you eat a little less meat and go big on the veg, which is also good for your health, you're basically a zero carbon family. Like, it's not rocket science. And both those things have the benefit of health and saving you money. So it's just like triple win that every person could and should do. In addition to that, if you've just left uni or if you're looking for a job at any stage in your life and career, this is a massive growth industry. So we have about 13 million people working in solar today. That'll grow to 100 million in the next 10, 15 years. And that's a huge opportunity to get into marketing solar, selling solar, starting your own local contractor business. If you're a tradie, if you're a sparky or HVAC or plumbing, you could get into solar electrification, start installing heat pumps and selling them and using Open Solar to help you with that. And I'd say lastly, if you're in the field of policy or if you're a business owner, business owners can go solar too. They can get into doing things in those industries, and policymakers should be supporting all this with really open market policies to help solar thrive. So we all can have an exciting role to play in the transition.
There's so many different innovations going on in the solar industry right now, and it really excites me. And it, when I was growing up in the 90s, people would talk about flying cars, and that's where people's kind of imaginations were going. And I know that at that time, I was definitely not thinking about sun-powered anything. So it's kind of cool how much innovation has gone into this industry. And I wanted to know what you see happening in the industry in the next 5 to 10 years.
So a kind of, maybe not too controversial, but just sort of banal point is the key technologies are here. Like, there's no major new thing that we need. So the solar cell technology is going to be the same. The battery cell technology is the same. The EVs are the same. So like the core technologies are here today. So we don't have to wait for anything new. I think the new innovations are around sort of the delivery of those technologies. So like a lot more kind of IT and software that helps you understand what solar can do for you and helps you manage your system. Right now, if I'm honest, I'd say it's not easy for me to, have my heat pump powered by the battery at the right time of day or to set my EV up to be charged at night. So I think a lot of the software and consumer-facing innovations are going to make that a lot easier and friendlier. Another innovation I think is really exciting is V2G, which stands for vehicle to grid. So batteries are a really important part of the solar electrified life because you generate power during the day, but you have it in your battery so you get home from work. And if you're British, like where we are right now, you have to have your cup of tea at about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Otherwise, you fizzle into non-existence.
No
So
tea
everyone,
alarm.
tea
Tea alarm.
alarm. Yeah. So everyone's switching on the kettle at, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, and that creates a huge spike in grid energy. And so what batteries do is they smooth that out. You store it during the day and you power it in the evening with your battery, and that helps the whole grid and your home. Now, interestingly, there's a massive battery in your EV. So the biggest battery you're probably going to own is the battery that's powering your car. It might be 60, 100 kilowatt hours, like a big amount of storage. And the good news is that lets you drive for 250, 300 miles without stopping. But it also means it's in your driveway and it can basically also power your home. So you think about the intelligence of a car that knows when to discharge energy back into the grid or into your home. Maybe you can even get paid quite a lot of money because the grid needs a lot of power right now and your car can just be programmed to go, yep, for the next 30 minutes, I don't need all my full battery. Send some energy into the grid and I get a check. So your car will start earning you money, as will your battery. And in its entirety, you've now got a very intelligent system that is basically working for you to save you cash and actually even write you some checks.
That is really cool, and I think more and more people will definitely start to adopt that. I wanted to also ask, how is Open Solar going to be useful to homeowners in the future?
So hopefully we're going to be really useful. Our plan is to deliver more software that covers all of the electrified home, that really sort of presents it in a simple way so that you can understand it, because I'm a geek, but most people aren't, and we get that. So, how much is solar going to cost me? How much electricity do I need to charge 2 cars that I want to have if I drive 15,000 miles a year? Answering those kinds of questions in a really simple way so you know what the right solution is and ultimately how much money that's going to save you. And then connecting you to really great contractors so you can easily switch it on and go electric and start having that solar powered life.
I like that. I like that. That's exciting. I'm really looking forward to see what comes, from Open Solar as we're getting in touch with homeowners and finding out what do they really want. And that kind of excites me as well. I guess I wanted to ask you, why should people join Open Solar, whether they're a homeowner or a pro? What would you say as the CEO of Open Solar?
It's a community. I think over 25 years, I've met so many amazing people. What I love about it as an industry, as a cultural shift and a technology shift, is it's taking power from the big people and giving it to the little people, by which I mean, homeowners, families take control of their own energy destiny. The businesses that are being created are mostly local businesses, electrical contractor businesses and the like, who are, creating really successful entrepreneurial growth industries in the local community, instead of like 2 or 3 massive fossil fuel businesses that are polluting our skies, making billions of dollars of profit, not paying enough tax, and getting subsidies. We're with our tax money, we're right now globally spending $7 trillion a year on fossil fuel subsidies. It's sort of crazy. So I love this counter-revolutionary community that we have on Open Solar, whether you're a customer or a contractor, just being part of that solution and taking control yourself. That's pretty cool.
Oh, I really like that. Do you have any exciting projects coming up yourself that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so doing a lot of work on the S-curve and on policy right now. So quickly on the S-curve, this is the maths that shows that if we carry on growing solar at 25% a year, and by the way, we've been growing at 34% since the year 2000, and it's actually got faster, not slower. So at just 25% growth, we will end up by 2035, in just 10 years, supplying half the world's energy. So we're going to get you to go solar, Melissa. I know it. You're going to get an EV. I know coming out of here, you're going to go out there and get an EV. Decisions like that made by millions of people around the world that save them money are driving this incredible transition. And frankly, we go from this position of being like frustrated by reading all these headlines about climate change and environmental destruction and fossil fuel wars and Russia and the Middle East, and it's like we're actually the solution. We don't need to ask government and rely on government. Like, we're going to do it because it's good for us. And so that control and leadership and just positive attitude we can bring to this, I think, is just one of the really exciting things.
Oh, thank you. No, that's really exciting. And looking at the S curve and the possibility for renewable energy, solar energy, gives me a lot of hope as well, because I think there has been a lot of negativity flying around, and kind of also our reliance on big oil. We just have no autonomy over, the choices that we make over our house. And that's just not true. We do, especially as homeowners, we can do quite a lot to make a difference and take back that control. Because I know that for me personally, last year was just a roller coaster, in terms of energy costs, and it can bring up a little bit of anxiety, thinking, well, how much is my energy going to cost me this year,
Yeah,
for the
that's a
UK, for people who are
yeah,
not in the UK. Our energy is rising again in April 2025, and it's just something that we can't control,
yeah.
unfortunately, unless you're in control of the energy that comes into your home, essentially.
Yeah, it's a really important point. It's not just saving you money, it's creating visibility and reduced anxiety, I think, for a lot of us, because you have no
Yeah.
idea what Russia's going to do with gas prices, a year from now. Like we had 2 years ago in the UK and Europe, the prices went up 3 or 4x. So yeah, having a solar electrified life means you've got control of that. You know exactly what your energy costs are going to be for the next 20 years, which is way better.
Yeah, it sounds sweet. Well, thank you so much, Birchy, for letting me interview you today. I've got one final question, and if you had a book or documentary that inspired your clean journey, what would you say it is?
Book or a documentary. I mean, I this is probably what most people would say. Definitely in this country, I think David Attenborough's nature programs.
I love him. I see him as my uncle. Honestly, he's great.
Yeah, he's my uncle too. We have to share uncles because he's just amazing. I think there's
Yeah,
probably 70 million Brits who would say he's their uncle.
yeah.
Some of whom are probably older than him, but um, he's amazing. Like this, joking apart, like the way that he's brought nature to life in our sitting rooms and on our TV screens, and just made us realize how beautiful it is. And not everyone can travel around the world to all these places, and understanding what we're giving up with climate change and destroying all those habitats. Like, solar will solve climate change. It will also solve land use. The little known secret, we need half as much land as fossil fuels to generate the same energy. So, it's a great solution and it can save nature. And I think I'd give full credit to David Attenborough for giving us all that love of nature.
Oh, thank you, Birchy. And then thank you for such a fun episode. It was really nice getting to know you a little bit better. I also want to thank everyone who's listened today.